You're listening to The Real Wealth Show with Kathy Fedke, the real estate investor's resource.
Can you imagine getting an interest rate on an investment property under 5% today? Well, I am here to tell you it is possible because one of our Real Wealth members just tested it. It worked. The loan went through. And on today's show, we're going to talk about where you could get that loan and on what kind of property. I'm Kathy Fedke. Welcome to the Real Wealth Show. Our guest today is our own director of Real Wealth Realty. That's our brokerage at Real Wealth. Leah Collich is also an investment counselor. Many of our members know her. She was a member and has been buying lots of rental property and continues to do so as she helps many of our members do the same. She is now a leader within Real Wealth and helping drive the company into the direction that we want it to go, which is helping more people create real wealth through the cash flow that real estate brings. Leah, welcome back to the Real Wealth Show. I always love to have you here because you really understand what investors are up to. So welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be surprised to hear that investors are really active right now in spite of the high interest rates. So what are you seeing specifically from Real Wealth investors?
Yeah, I mean, we are so busy at Real Wealth. Lots of interest in, I think, as people are, starting to lose confidence in the stock and wondering, with the financial news of the last month or two, I think people are really seeing real estate as a stable place to go. And so we've noticed an uptick of investors who are reaching out to us, new and experienced, and they're putting a lot of property under contract. I just know off the top of my head, more than a dozen closings in Dallas from Real Wealth Investors happening this month.
And you're one of them.
Yeah. Right. People are buying.
Yeah. I mean, you were just saying you're buying actually a short-term rental in Dallas for personal purposes as well. I love that. I love lifestyle investing where you're from Dallas and you get to visit your family, and why not have a short-term rental you could use when you're there? But how are you making that work with today's high interest rates? I mean, they've come down, but it's still higher than what people are used to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Dallas is a challenging market for cash flow for obvious reasons. One, this property we bought is kind of in a prime suburb of Dallas, really close to our family. And so it would never cash flow as a long-term rental. And then especially at today's rates. So, this specific purchase, it was, okay, we have to adjust the use of the property and go short-term with it. But the timing was right. I mean, we have wanted to buy a property in one of these prime suburbs for a while, but it's been so competitive to get anything here. I mean, I can't compete with owner occupants who get emotional about a neighborhood or a property and are willing to go way above asking price and bidding wars. I can't compete there. But with the slowdown in this market, we saw a property that had been totally redone in a great neighborhood, and we were just watching it, and we kept seeing it sit on the market, and the seller kept just dropping the price. And then he threw in some huge seller concession. So we're like, let's get this. It might be our time to jump on it. So we did. And we actually cashed out of an investment that we bought years ago to fund the purchase of this one.
And you mentioned that before the interview, that you were willing to refinance out of an extremely low rate into a higher rate to get that cash out. Do you have any regrets?
Not yet. I'm really in my personal investing journey, really trying to focus. I'm trying to have a forward lean on using the equity that I've accrued to control more assets. I mean, I've been in this long enough now to see that the game is own as many fundamental assets as you can that are sustainable, that have that cash flow, and just let time do its thing, right? So, we bought a property in Florida actually at the perfect time, just by luck, locked in super low rates. I think we were in the low threes, and that home appreciated incredibly in the run up over the last year. And we pulled out almost $100,000 out of that asset in just a year and a half, and refinanced it to the low sevens. And that was painful. And we certainly got some side eyes from family members as we kind of explained that was our approach. But we kind of, again, know that our ultimate goal is to use the equity that we've grown and spread it out on controlling more good, solid assets in more growth markets.
Because you're really in wealth building mode versus so much cash flow
Right.
mode. Yeah, you
Right.
have a job. Hopefully you'll want to keep it for a while. We love having you as a leader within Real Wealth, and we know that the investors who have the privilege of getting to speak with you and when you come in as an investment counselor, they really benefit. So keep using that equity so that you need a job.
I can delay the gratification of my portfolio. I'm happy here at Real Wealth for now, so I can do that. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to really get across to investors in the calls that I'm having is, the market is, it feels scary right now for people to invest. Prices are still very high. The reality is prices are not coming down very much in the markets where Real Wealth has been investing and where we're recommending people invest. And then on top of that, you have the high rates. So, the numbers just look very different to investors, and it's scaring the newbie investors, and it definitely is giving pause to the experienced investors even. Just trying to get people to see that this is our opportunity to buy. And so our whole posture at Real Wealth has really been focused around that. Like, hey, we need to be educating people on, the fact that this is an opportunity. Long term, we believe in what the housing market does. So, we're trying everything we can to find new markets and find new opportunities and pull forward the deals. I mean, we follow obviously the inventory of all the 16 teams that we work with now. And we're seeing these incredible deals with great returns or in great areas, and we're trying to just send them out. Hey, everyone, look at this. This still makes sense. But yeah, we're trying to get people to see the light.
Yeah, and obviously they are because the webinars are all the properties are selling out after one webinar. So I think every time I interview you, I learn something new, which is really cool. But I hadn't really thought about if you're in a 3% or 4% rate, but you have a bunch of money, a bunch of equity sitting in the property making zero, and you balance and you average that out, it's really not as good a deal. So what would it look like on a spreadsheet with the numbers if you take that equity out and put it to work where it is gaining traction?
Right.
You're potentially making more, especially over the long run. What we know without a doubt is there is a shortage of homes out there, especially in these areas where they're growing so rapidly like Dallas. So you were on a tour, you're from Dallas, you were on a tour recently with Real Wealth members. I'm actually going to be there this weekend, or what will that be? April 14th, 15th. I think you're going to be there too.
Yep.
What did you notice on that tour, and why are so many investors buying in North Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, North Dallas has always just had an incredible economy. I mean, employment here is very easy to come by. Honestly, my husband and I, we move a lot with his career, and we've been to a lot of major metros, and we always kind of compare everything to our hometown. And I've long said, even before I really got to know, this market from an investing perspective, there's just so much opportunity here. It would be very easy for us at any time to come back, find a job, and pick up life in this metro. It's just ample opportunity. But the areas where our Dallas team focuses in particular, are kind of out in the forward path of progress of the Dallas metro. It's clearly growing north. There's clearly opportunity in that direction. And, this team really believes in kind of putting a stake in the ground just out where that growth is starting to get, where homes are still affordable and you still can have cash flow. Like I mentioned, you can't find good cash flow in the core, like prime suburbs of Dallas. But if you go another, 25, 35 minutes outside of those suburbs, you find it. And so a lot of people joined us on that tour. Actually, a lot of people on that tour were from the Northeast, and they're used to home prices that are astronomical. So coming and seeing brand new construction homes in the low to mid 200s that positively cash flow, even at today's interest rates. I think there was a little bit of a got to see it to believe it in the air, I think, as we were driving around. And scope out the location and get a feel for what the investments look like here.
Right. Well, currently we have 2 properties under contract here, so we don't want to get too far, ahead of ourselves here. Right? But we have one to closing next month, and we have one in the summer. So, we're hoping to pass. This would be our 3rd investment this year.
Today, what is it that you guys are hoping to have or feel by the end of the day?
I would say making
the decision which town we want to invest. I think we are very convinced about North Texas. And it's a little bit of feeling that this is a good opportunity for us that makes sense, and then make the decision.
So you already own in Dallas. You've already bought some investment properties here.
Last month, yes.
Okay. And tell me why you signed up for the tour this weekend.
Well, initially, honestly, I thought I'd be here by the time I was still on the process for my properties. It was so quick that I already have them. So I still want to come out here to just see what it's all about. It's one thing to see it online and see the performance, but then looking at the actual properties is a different story. So I think to be able to see how it all works, what's around, like the things you don't see, like the construction, I think that's a big thing too.
Yeah. How was last night connecting with other investors?
I think that's the most reason I came out here was really just to meet people, because that kind of keeps you going forward and that motivation, because sometimes you get back into your normal life and you kind of just get back into your normal stride, which kind of takes you off path of where you want to be, reaching your goals. So I make sure that I constantly do that regularly.
And I feel like some people are a little intimidated by group settings like that. Do you struggle with that too?
And normally I'm more like a reserved person, so I kind of push myself out of that shell, and I find it's one way to do it, because you have to surround yourself with people that are doing it, because you start seeing what other people are doing, and you kind of get motivated to push yourself as well to go forward, because it's hard to do it on your own.
Yeah, I think the best part is being able to be on the ground and actually see what your investment would actually look like. I think really going in and looking at what your potential investment look like, and I was very intrigued, but looking at houses on paper feels a little bit distant. So having the best tour, go around the city, feeling the vibe of like what these developing areas are is awesome. And I think I just took away that I wanted to go in investing right now. So just I think my mindset have changed after attending the workshop and the events and the bus tour.
What did you think of the areas that you saw today? I mean, were some of them scarier than others, or did you prefer some over the others?
I do have one that I like better than the others, but obviously I think this is just what it feels like when it's free moving, right? It's not as popular. They don't have everything all laid out. The infrastructure is still being developed, which is good to see, because I've lived in Seattle. I saw how it has moving past 5 years and how expensive and how sort of the city has evolved. And so it's good to see what those cities look like before those things that happened and actually went in and make the city more vibrant.
You're pioneering.
Exactly. That's what I felt like. You're going into a city where you're like the pioneers, going and you're like, oh, I can see so much potential from here on.
Yeah.
And being able to see that is great.
How did connecting with the team help your confidence level?
I think knowing what the end-to-end process will look like if I'm interested in this market, who is going to be there to kind of walk me through? And once I purchase the property, where do I go from here? How do I go about renting and managing the property and them, having the full team? It's really reassuring now, and getting to know each one of them and knowing how else they're at their job. It's also it helps to know that there are people that you trust that are in place to help you through this and guide you through this.
But yeah, it was a great time for people to just put their eyes on what we talk about so much and teach them so much about in our content.
Yeah, I can't recommend enough going on those tours, because you get to meet other investors. You get to see what's happening. I was just on the Florida one in near Tampa, and it was a full tour as well. And there were locals from Tampa too that wanted to join us, and we'll end up buying. Again, people were fighting over the same properties and wanting to buy. That's one of the challenges about the tours is there's a limited amount of inventory and everybody wants it. And there were 3 or 4 people in a waiting list for certain properties, but that's encouraging, right? When you're on a tour with other investors, especially local ones that still want to buy through Real Wealth because they trust us and they're busy doing other things, even if it's in their own backyard, they want the help and support. And these are great deals. But just to interact with other people gives a lot of comfort, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of us are the only people in our friend groups, in our social groups that are doing this. And, I've shared before that sometimes I feel like fatigued when we go out with friends or, even some family. And I feel like we're always having to defend what we do. And we're always kind of met with this skepticism, right? But at events like this, when you're with other like-minded people, these are people who have had their eyes open in the same way that you have, or they're trying to get there. And, the connection opportunity is one of my favorite parts of the tour. I think I'm a lot like you, Kathy, in that like, I don't need to see it to do it. I have property that I've never seen, don't ever plan to go see it. So I'm not someone who needs that, like, to touch it kind of thing. But for some people, like that's a part of their acquisition process. They want to go, not necessarily to pick out the specific deal, but to like understand, the path of progress, understand, the infrastructure, understand the feel of the neighborhoods and the classification of those neighborhoods. And that all is really easy when you're there in the flesh and not just relying on Google Maps or a FaceTime call.
I would say I'm almost the opposite, where I do know, I do this, right? Every day for a living, finding out where the hot markets are, where the cash flow exists in those markets, getting ahead of the path of progress and all of that. We teach it, we help people. But when I go on the tours and see it in real life, like to see all the freeway expansion and all the cranes and all the growth. I mean, just on the Florida trip, I saw that Kathy Woods is building her headquarters in the part of town where we've been buying, where I own property, where it's incredibly cheap still because it's an opportunity zone. So these areas are transitioning in areas that already have so much growth. Mm-hmm. So even in big cities like Tampa, where it's going to be hard to find cash flow, you can in certain little areas where those areas are up and coming. So for me to get out there and see it real time, that is important for me. And I did want to buy property, but I won't compete with our investors, and they bought everything. So I had to call and say, just when there's something available for me, I want it.
Yeah. Well, in that, the Tampa tour in particular, we got incredible feedback from the investors who went to that, because the team there, we're really leaning on the local expertise of the team that we refer to in that market. And the team there is seeing this gentrification happening in a very specific pocket of Tampa. And they're seeing opportunity that goes beyond the traditional, turnkey model, but really looks at, okay, the value of the land relative to what's happening here, and how can we, control the land by putting buying the little, old dumpy house that's on the property already, renting it out to pay the mortgage on it, but then consider things like adding ADUs and, possibly tearing down the house eventually and building a better, nicer house when that gentrification really fully takes off in those areas. And so many of our investors had heard that strategy being communicated in some of our content, but it wasn't until they could go and like really see that cool, trendy street with all the concept bars and all the coffee shops and all the millennials, pushing strollers with their latte cups in their hands, that they're like, oh, I see, like, this is what's happening here. And I get that this house on Google Street View might look kind of dumpy and questionable, but it's 5 blocks from, where everybody wants to be.
Yeah. Those are the deals that just get me really excited. Yeah. For 25 years, I'm still excited about that type of thing. So do we have more tours left? And if so, where do people find out about those?
Yes, we do. We're in the final 4 for the season. So like you mentioned, we'll be in Dallas this next weekend. Then we're going back down to Florida. We'll be in St. Augustine and Jacksonville. End of April, we'll be up in Indianapolis. And then the first week of May, we'll be in Baltimore, which has been one of our most popular markets because it has some of the best cash flow that we see in the network. So our remaining tour schedule and registration is up on the portal. So if you're a member, if you want to become a member, it's free to become a member, but you can log in and you'll see there's a tab up at the top for upcoming tours, and you can register there. They're so fun.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk about some of the new teams that you guys have been looking at. Actually, in a part of town where you live,
Yep.
we have a new team and some incredible financing that people will be mind blown about. So, yeah, what's new and exciting at Real Wealth?
Yeah. So in keeping with it being a buyer's market, I mean, we're just constantly trying to find, okay, where are the things that we want to buy? And San Antonio, Texas has been a market that's been on our kind of wish list for some time. And then I actually moved to San Antonio about a year and a half ago. And once I saw it and really understood the growth that was happening in the area, it's like, oh, we've got to find a team here. We've got to connect with some expert here that can help our investors invest here as well. So we did just launch a new team in San Antonio that specializes in multifamily. So duplexes and quadplexes, and they have a great range of A-class, super nice duplexes that, probably wouldn't cash flow right away, but then they also have that really solid, middle class, good cash flow, but great growth potential. A lot of them right outside of military bases. San Antonio is nicknamed Military City, USA. Few people know that that's a huge part of the economy in San Antonio. And so this team that we've partnered with there kind of focuses on these core neighborhoods where rent demand is extremely high.
And the financing is superior.
Yes, this is really interesting. This team has found a really awesome sort of concession to offer to buyers. They're doing what's called a builder forward commitment loan, and apparently these have been around for a long time, but there hasn't really been a need for them until recently. But essentially, they can lock a certain amount of capital for the contracts they have closing, and then extend that capital at a reduced interest rate. And so our very first investor to buy through this team got a 10-1 ARM financed at 4.75%, if you can believe that.
Let me just repeat that, 4.75%. And this closed, so we know it's possible. I think if it hadn't closed, we wouldn't talk about it because we just think it's too good to be true, but it's real.
Right.
To be able to buy a brand new duplex or fourplex at that rate in an area like San Antonio where the military is probably not going away anytime soon, but also that Texas is not going to stop growing anytime soon either.
Right. Texas just joined California as only the second state to exceed 30 million in population. So, and I know the San Antonio team shared with me a stat that just this past week, the Census Bureau released some of their data and revealed the fastest growing counties in the country, and 6 out of 10 of those counties are all in Texas. And Bexar County is one of them, which is where a lot of the deals are that our San Antonio team is focusing on. So there's so much opportunity there. I mean, it's impressive, the growth that's happening, and it doesn't have the high prices that Austin does, but it's very close to Austin. I mean, Kathy, they're talking about expanding I-35, which connects Austin and San Antonio, to make it a double-decker highway because it's a commutable distance. So there's been some talk that, in the future, San Antonio and Austin could become kind of this mega MSA similar to Dallas and Fort Worth. And so, who knows if that will happen, but just the sheer amount of people that are coming there today make it make sense. And if that does happen, then it's really going to be awesome that we were there.
It sure seems to be. I talked to a lot of investors buying in that, in between those two cities for that reason.
Yeah. It's a great team, and this loan product is so good. You're right. When we heard about it, we got on the phone and we're like, "This is too good to be true. Like, what's the scoop here?" And we did a lot of due diligence on it, and it's legit, and so much so that we've shared the information with some of our other teams that do new construction, and we have several teams now that are offering similar programs to get investors into new construction deals for sub 5% interest rates. It's incredible.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. Okay. So if you were to buy the ones, which one would you buy of those? The ones that don't cash flow or the ones that do? Because I know you're kind of more on a growth path.
Yeah. The ones that don't cash flow, I really like, but I probably wouldn't, just because the price point is quite a bit higher. But he had this one development that I just was really fond of. It was a single family neighborhood where there was some remaining infill lot locations. This was a new neighborhood. I would say all homes in that neighborhood were probably built in, 2015 and onward. And he bought these infill lots and put duplexes on them. I guess there was no HOA restrictions or zoning restrictions to build a multifamily. And so he said the neighbors weren't too happy about it, but he plugged these really beautiful duplexes in this single family home neighborhood. And it was one of my favorites when we toured, just because it felt, super desirable for a tenant to be in that single family home, but have the kind of lower price point of renting a duplex.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And what's the other team, new team to Real Wealth?
Okay. So we have been vetting this team for the last quarter. Kansas City is a market that comes up all the time from investors. We wanted to be there. We've been there in the past, but didn't have a team currently there that we could refer to. So we identified a great turnkey company there that does rehabs in Kansas City, Missouri. And then they also do some new construction as well. Much better cash flow generally in Kansas City than in San Antonio, which would be more of a growth market. But we will officially be launching Kansas City at the end of April. So two new markets coming to Real Wealth's list of referral providers.
Very exciting. All right. So we're going to wrap up, but do you have any last thoughts? Or I know you talk to investors all day long and they ask lots of questions. What are the biggest questions that they ask that you could answer here?
I think everyone is asking now, is the timing right? Am I buying at the peak, when we're about to, slide down into a housing catastrophe? And, I don't think that's the case. Especially again, in the markets that we're in, we're not just investing anywhere. We're investing in very specific markets that do have stable footing, that do have strong diversified economies, and that we think will probably weather a recession well, or better than other markets potentially. So, the question of, is it the right time is so frequent, but my answer is always there's never a right time. There's never a wrong time. It's just doing. You might have to change how you underwrite a deal now, and you've got to do a lot. I was talking to an investor about this just the other day about doing the math of whether she wanted to put down the extra money to do 25% down to bring down the principal and interest payment, or if she wanted to just, eat the break-even property for a couple years with the plan to refinance and keep that cash as the reserves to help offset that tight cash flow for that investment. So, it's just changing your perspective on how you underwrite and how you offset the risk of owning the asset. But I will always say that owning the asset is the game in any market cycle.
Yeah, I agree. And bottom line, we know that there's just not enough inventory out there for the demand. And especially if you look at the number of people who would love to own a home, but they're priced out, but they would love to at least be able to rent that home.
Yeah.
So demand is there and supply is low.
Yes.
That keeps me positive. And we're on a trajectory of mortgage rates kind of consistently coming down as the economy slows. And every time mortgage rates come down even a little bit, we start to see massive interest in people. Well, people coming off the sidelines because now they can afford.
Yeah.
All right, Leah. Well, thank you again for joining me here on the Real Wealth Show and for everything you do for our members at Real Wealth. You are just such an incredible asset to all the people who follow us. I don't know how many people understand who you are and what you do, but I'll just summarize. You're so involved with the leadership at Real Wealth, and coming from someone who was a member, who is an investor, and now a leader within the company, you're helping so many people. And I know that's where your heart's at too.
Yeah, I love it. Grateful for it.
All right. Well, we'll see you soon, hopefully in Dallas.
Yes, I'll see you next weekend.
Okay. Take care. And thank you for joining me here on The Real Wealth Show. You can go to realwealthshow.com to get information on the San Antonio team and the Kansas City team and the Tampa team and all the really wonderful property teams that we work with and have worked with for the past 10 to 20 years. I'm Kathy Fedke. Thanks for joining me here on The Real Wealth Show, and we'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, go to realwealthshow.com.